So in 2021, when I was appointed to MCI and also Minister looking after Smart Nation, in fact, it was the very first time that the two came within the ambit of a single minister. It used to be there was a minister for MCI, and then there was a minister looking after Smart Nation. So it quickly became apparent to me that there's actually a lot of synergy. And the fact that I was sitting on both sides was actually a great privilege and a great advantage, particularly when I interacted with my international counterparts. Because this domain is so new. I mean, if you go to any country, there will definitely be a defense minister. There won't be many defense minister. There will be a minister looking after manpower, labor, right? There will be a minister looking after education. Sometimes they may split it into higher education and then the other, aspects of education. But in many respects, the what the MCI does and what the Smart Nation Digital Government Group was seeking to do had a lot of synergies. And so when I interact with my counterparts, there will be sometimes more than one that I have to interact with, particularly also because I look after cybersecurity. The two came together, and over time, I actually, saw that there were a lot of merits to it. And it relates to the idea of the core mission is to architect Singapore's digital future. Then if you take a step back and say, what does architecting involve? Architecting involves conceptualizing, and then architecting also then involves designing. So you've got to turn your concept into a design. You have to have a vision, and then you have to design that vision that can be transformed into reality. Now, after conceptualization and design, then it's a whole series of I's. I's as in you have to implement. When you implement, sometimes you find that things don't yet exist, so you have to invent. Sometimes the thing already exists. You have to, however, it doesn't work as well as it needs to work. So you may have to improvise, or there are constraints. Then you also have to iterate because, things, your assumptions didn't turn out to be entirely accurate. So, or the implementation threw up new challenges. So you got to take it back to the design stage and then say, okay, how do we implement it differently? So this whole series of activities is what architecting is about. And so for us, in terms of thinking about Singapore's digital future, it is like that. It is like that. So when you then have this frame of mind, then a few things will become prominent. One is that this is going to be a multidisciplinary effort. And that relates to your ambition. If your ambition is just to architect and build a single house, that should not be too difficult, or take too long. But if you're trying to architect and bring into reality a whole city, then there will be many houses, there will be many public buildings, there will be many commercial buildings, industrial buildings. There will have to be precincts. There will have to be towns, and then you have to also start thinking, where do you locate things, so that they can move seamlessly and yet at the same time preserve certain values, for example, in our case, preserve the value of greenery, right? So in this architecting, it has to do with your degree of ambition. The higher your ambition, the broader your goals, then actually the more multidisciplinary is going to be. And the multidisciplinary aspect of the Smart Nation's work can be seen in at least two levels, two dimensions. One is by functions. You have to bring strategy. You have to bring the idea of policy. You have to build it, and then you also have the operations part of it. So you have to build it, and then you have to operate it. But it's also the case that if you think of the multidisciplinary aspects of it, the other way is that of looking at it is that there is the economic aspect of it. There is also the security aspect of it. And beyond that, there is the social aspect, there is the community aspect. So all of these must come together. So in my team, you will have people that have to be drawn from different disciplines. So if you want to regulate the digital domain, for example, then you're going to have to say, okay, who understands laws? And how do you change laws, in order to bring about a certain set of behaviors? So the multidisciplinary part becomes, one of the strongest reasons why, there is a good synergies when we bring the Smart Nation side and the MCI together. Now then, there is also another aspect of it. When you're building a city, parts of the city will be quite fully built already. Parts of the city are still at the very early stages. We're still designing it. So it's a little bit like, if you think about it, our most pressing needs when Singapore was being built up, housing. So you settle housing. Then okay, people have to earn a living. So what's the industrial, aspect of it, right? And then you think about the commercial aspect of it, because your ambition is, to also be a business hub. Then you think about infrastructure like port. Sports came much later, and then our arts museum, National Gallery, they all came much later. The team working with me must feel very comfortable and actually enjoy the fact that this thing will take many years to unfold, and our role is to orchestrate it. Our role is, in some sense, to make a call. So everything has a certain relevance in timing. You do too early, no point. You do too late, then you're in trouble. I decided that I should take a step back and give you this context in order to understand, the work that we do in any particular year. So now we move on to this idea of, okay, what did we do in 2023? In the earlier phase of your architecting, you're really just trying to identify the important precincts that need to be developed, right? And in our case, in the digital domain, the precincts that we're thinking of is that the digital economy is one precinct. You want it to be vibrant. So, that's one way of thinking about it. Then you say, but it's not just, the digital economy. You also want an inclusive digital society. But between these two, they have to be supported by the government. The digital government has to be a progressive digital government. And then, as a foundation for everything to work properly, you need comprehensive digital security. So 2023 will be a continuation of what we did in the earlier phase. In the earlier phase, we go broad. Once you have identified the precinct, you start the ball rolling. Okay, how do we advance? Building up a vibrant digital economy, building up an inclusive digital society, building up a progressive digital government, in strengthening digital security. So 2023, I would characterize it as a year of going deep. If you think of the digital economy, we decided that this is the right time now to think of the digital connectivity blueprint. And so for the first time, we put it together. I think it was published in early June. It quite comprehensively identifies what we want to do by way of hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure, meaning digital utilities, and then the digital, interface. Just 2 items alone in this digital connectivity blueprint, it will take about $20 billion to materialize. So that's just the subsea cables that we are creating additional landing points for, as well as the data centers, the green data centers that we hope to build up. So that's one aspect of the digital economy that we decided to literally go deeper. We also put out the first ever digital economy report, which shows that if you look just at the vertical stack in info and communications, and then you add up across the whole of the economy, in all the sectors where digital activities are helping to add value to the businesses, the horizontal part of it, then actually out of every $100 that Singapore generates in GDP, $17.30 comes from digital technologies. We've gone quite far. And so and if you look at that digital economy report, you will be able to see that, we made some comparisons with, other countries. Singapore does reasonably well. And then if you think in terms of the enterprises, not bad also. That report that we put out also showed that 94% of businesses in Singapore at least adopt one digital solution. But this is where the data is also very interesting. It shows us that when it comes to the use of AI and machine learning, only a miserable 4%. Yeah. So it shows that you've achieved the breadth. At the national level, in infrastructure, you are going deeper. But the enterprise level, being able to go more deeply, meaning using more sophisticated technology, there is room for us to improve. So in that way, I think the digital economy is making progress, but we also know where the additional efforts, can bear fruit. On the digital society, we also, for the first time, put out SG Digital Society report. And again, I think it was quite encouraging. If you look at the fact that 84% of Singaporeans, we asked them, do you think that digital technologies have improved your lives? 84% of them, 85% of them said yes. So they say that it has improved their lives. But I think the consistent feedback is also that there is a bit of a strain. People feel a little bit fatigued at constantly having to learn new digital technologies. So that's why I decided to come out to also say to the broader population, broader community of service providers, that digital first need not mean digital only. We wanted to make sure that people, registered, that we are not just, going all out without thinking about some of the communities that need more help, to be able to adopt digital technologies in their daily lives. So then we also decided that we should put out more support for those who are vulnerable. Seniors Go digital scheme, I think, has made a reasonable impact. I think by now it would have benefited more than 250,000 seniors. One simple indicator, people above the age of 65, how likely they know how to use mobile payment. 5 years ago, I think around 20%. At the end of last year, around 70%. So by now should have exceeded 70%, which when you think about it is not bad. It's quite a significant improvement as a reflection of how people have, learned to benefit from digital technologies. Another very important group that we were worried about will be the lower income. If they are unable to access broadband or devices, then it's very difficult for them to catch up with all the advances. So we revamped our support scheme. We call it Digital Access at Home. And since it was revamped earlier this year, we've had about 5,000 people benefit from it. It means that if, for example, they live in a public rental flat, the broadband subscription can be as low as $5 a month. And actually getting a device, is possible for less than $100. So which means that we've tried to make it, as accessible as possible. And if they come to us and tell us that even that $5 or that usually the $5 is not much of an issue. If that $100, less than $100 to get a device is still an issue for them, actually community resources can be brought to bear, can help. So in terms of digital society, making it more inclusive, I think we are also making some headway. Maybe move on to digital government. Today, vast majority of the services that the government delivers to the public, you can do it end-to-end online, vast majority. And then if we measure in terms of the uptime, the government sets a target of 99.5%. And for most of the critical systems, agencies are able to meet that target. In fact, what we found was that on average, the downtime for these critical systems would be less than 4 hours per month. So for digital government, services, uptime, and I think another important aspect is also that government itself, and I think certainly Singapore government is one of the first in the world to experiment with the use of generative AI. Then in terms of digital security, I would say that this year is significant as we put into effect the Code of Practice for social media services. This is to regulate, how they do content moderation, to try and make sure that, online, in terms of the content that we are exposed to, it doesn't cause too many tripwires, content that we would be concerned about. We've also updated some of our laws to act against, scammers. For example, I think in May we updated a law, money mules, we'll go after them. The law has to be updated in order for us to be able to do so effectively. We also passed the Online Criminal Harms Act. So that was probably in July. Then if you look at what was just announced, we already have a Cybersecurity Act that sets out the obligations, for system owners of critical information infrastructure. We are going beyond the CIIs. We are going to some of the foundational services like cloud providers and also data centers. And so now these updates to the law, they are being put out for public consultation. And I think it is, something that we see as coming to fruition in 2024, certainly. So we'll do that. So that's really, the few key buckets: digital economy, digital society, digital government, digital security. I would say, however, before we, go on to talk about 2024, that 2023 is also very interesting and exciting for us where AI is concerned. Because generative AI has made it so accessible, for people, then suddenly the world, recognizes just how much this technology, this general purpose technology, can impact us. So fortunately, our earlier investments continue to bear fruit. AI, investments by Singapore is not just through the National AI Strategy, the first edition of it, but actually we started very early in focusing on AI governance. So quite apart from having a governance framework, we developed a testing framework and toolkit, because it's like you say that this appliance is safe. And we created a software toolkit that you can use for testing the AI system. We call it AI Verify. I was very pleasantly surprised that in my recent interactions with international counterparts, how well known AI Verify is. Because it is one thing to be concerned about AI safety. It's another thing to develop a tool to test for it. So AI Verify took the important step in 2023. We made it open source. And what that means is that it's not just our internal team trying to improve AI Verify. It means that the whole world, of software developers are welcome to identify, the features that can be improved. They can contribute to the development of AI Verify. We decided that in order to advance the development of AI Verify, we would also set up a foundation, meaning that it's not just the government that is interested in AI Verify. And the foundation now has something like 90 members, including some of the biggest names in technology, Google, Microsoft, they're all in it. And I think it's also very significant that the AI Verify framework has now been mapped to the US AI risk management framework, meaning that if you meet the conditions here, it also tells you in what way you have met the conditions in the US. So the interoperability has been, set up. So that, I think it is significant. So to the AI governance community, this is significant. These are the things that we keep in mind when we updated our national AI strategy. It's about how we can create excellence, in Singapore in AI development and deployment. It's also about empowerment, how we can enable people to do better. Ultimately, what we hope is that by identifying the 3 key activity drivers, as well as the 10 enablers and the 15 actions, it will get us further, right? And on top of that, we managed to pull together a conference thinking about, firstly, how we can make a contribution to international AI developments. I think Singapore has an opportunity to play a meaningful role in this regard. That's why we came up with the 12 questions, But I would also say that it helps us to inform our own update of the National AI R&D plan. There is a National AI R&D plan, and that's one of the other things that you have to, go update once you update your National AI strategy. And I think it's also very useful in terms of us thinking about how we update our model governance framework. We've had the model governance framework for AI since 2019 because of Gen AI. All in all, I would say that if we go back to how we are thinking about smart nation development, as architecting Singapore's digital future, we went from broad to deep, and we will continue to have to go, deeper. When I talk to my international counterparts and I tell them about vibrant digital economy, inclusive digital society, they all get very excited because they're all policymakers. When it comes to citizens, and if you turn the lens around and say from their perspective, why does this matter? The 2 most important ways it matters is that, is this opportunity for me? So particularly for the developments in the digital economy and in AI, what does it mean when we say opportunities? Opportunities in terms of for people, jobs, right? Yeah. Not only I want to do a better job, but please first help me prevent myself from losing a job. I want to stay relevant. Staying relevant and being able to do a better job from the people perspective, individual perspective. If you're a business and you're telling me about all this digital economy, right, and tell me about AI, I'm really only interested, can I grow, and expand my business, either domestically or beyond? So I'm interested in growth if I'm a business. If I'm a scientist or researcher, what I would be interested in is that, can I make a difference? Can I do something positive for the world? And that's why I'm in this, right? So when it comes to, expanding opportunities in the digital domain, we intend to focus on all of this in COS. We've been in discussion with DPM's team. How much does it involve, by way of investments to build this up? And how much is he, as finance minister, setting aside, to implement the National AI Strategy 2.0? When people, think about how they're moving around in the digital environment, inevitably in today's context, they feel a certain sense of trepidation. Because although they say that they have benefited from it, and they know and they welcome the benefits that come along with all of their digital activities, they have also become much warier as a result of all the scams, that they encounter. Sometimes it is scams, but sometimes it is just the fact that you can't get the service. So for example, if the bank has an outage, you are very annoyed. And sometimes it's not just a matter of annoyance. Sometimes you're worried that, maybe you need to transfer, some money for your child or for your parent in order for them to be able to, get treatment or, buy something that they urgently need. And these outages, are not helpful. So that begs, the question of what can we do about it? And so the whole area of resilience is an important one that we will want to address, put, as a strong focus for 2024. And the idea of building up the resilience is part of ensuring that digital services, digital infrastructure perform in a way that people feel they can trust. So the whole of 2024, we will focus very much on trust and safety. So trust and safety is central to how we sharpen, our offerings in the digital domain. We have decided that we will set up a task force. It's a multi-agency task force. The multi-agency task force essentially is to look at the resilience, which is tied to the security of digital infrastructure and services. It will certainly have to look at the government's own digital infrastructure and services, but it has to look beyond that because the government also uses major vendors in order to deliver these services. So what are the requirements that the vendors, the service providers, of digital infrastructure, what are the perhaps additional requirements that they need to meet in order to not just be efficient, but also resilient and secure? Those are the things that we're going to have to look at. But suffice to say that it is part of us, paying greater attention to how people can trust our digital environment. One of the very important aspects of trust, making sure that digital infrastructure and services are resilient and secure for people to use. That's one aspect. The other aspect of trust and safety, which I alluded to earlier, is scams. Since time immemorial, there has been scams. People have found ways to cheat other people. But with digital technologies, the scams can spread like wildfire. They can go very far, they can go very fast. It's the fact that digital technologies enable them to spread like wildfires. Now, so then if you think about what do you do when there's a wildfire, right? What do you do when there's a wildfire? Of course, firstly, you need firefighters. And you need to stand up a specialized team to deal with it, which we have done. There's the anti-scam command, and they have, in a way, expanded their team of firefighters to go beyond the SPF, the police officers that are involved. It also involves the banks. The banks are the ones that can freeze the account. So the banks have been roped in. They sit together with the anti-scam command. But you cannot be fighting fires all the time, right? You need to go upstream to try and prevent the wildfires in the first place. So with fire, you will have a fire safety act, you will have codes, you will have regulations. And similarly, we have also intervened at various levels to try and ensure that the preventive aspects is better taken care of. So the Online Criminal Harms Act makes it a legal requirement for some of the upstream measures to be implemented by these intermediaries. Preventing it can also involve cleaning up, how text messages are sent to us. So for example, the SSIR. So these upstream measures don't just involve the police. It involves the MHA to bring about legal change. It involves IMDA, because this one, you intervene at the level of the telecommunication service. And it also involves the MES, because now you can do kill switch, and then you also have money lock, right? The idea is that, you park your money, those that, are available for transactions, and you lock up some that you will never want to transact digitally. So these are the different ways where we do upstream prevention. There must also be a concerted effort with public education. It's part of your whole ecosystem to help people to prevent the scams from spreading like wildfire. I think in particular, we want to move beyond containment. So the results are not bad. If you think about the SSIR, the registry, in third quarter alone, it probably blocked millions of calls. So it's showing some progress. But this progress, I view it as containment. It's not enough to contain it. You want to encircle it. So how do we tighten the circle? So the tightening of the circle, I think we are going to do two things. And one of the things that I can give you a preview of is how we're going to involve the companies that are in the delivery of various digital services. So telcos. So today, if you're alert, you see a +65, that's not a real local call. It's actually coming from overseas. So you don't answer it, right? But you find it very annoying, right? So we are going to make available an option for people who don't expect to get any overseas calls in the first place. They can activate an option to totally block all overseas calls. Speaking as a person with an elderly parent, I find this feature very good because it will mean that from my parents' mobile phones, I will activate this feature and they don't need to get scam calls. Activating this feature will help to protect the vulnerable who may accidentally answer an overseas call from a scammer and be tricked into it. The second thing that we will introduce is that, remember we talked about, the idea of a building, a city, right? So many of these efforts that we put in place, you could think of it as preventing scams at the building level. So if you want to prevent a fire, you also can put fire sprinkler, in the common corridor and so on, right? If you go to a commercial building, that's what will happen, right? You have fire sprinkler system. The rule says that the building owner must do that. You should be encouraged. Within your own home, you may also want to add additional fire alarm, in order to protect yourself. So now we are working with Google because Google is the one that has a say over, the Android phones. We are working with them to improve the anti-malware measures. Can the device also serve as an additional layer of block? So in other words, again, from this idea of broad, deep, sharp, go to where the problem, still exists, and then try, and in the case of dealing with scams, encircle it. Make it tighter and tighter, so that the places where the wildfires can happen are smaller and smaller.